Hi guys, welcome back to Codemaster Coach, your medical coding tutor. Today guys, we're talking about outpatient medical coders. Outpatient medical coders assign codes to services and procedures for patients who are treated in an outpatient setting. So think about it. What are outpatient settings? Think of clinics. A physician office is actually an outpatient setting. Emergency room is outpatient. Patients who come in, I know with me, when I go see my doctor in the doctor's office, she does have a lab, so my lab work can be done in the office. But if I need x-rays or any type of cardiovascular procedures, I have to go over to the hospital to have those services performed. So these services can come in a range of different forms. Dialysis clinics are outpatient settings. Even cancer centers, as long as you go in and go back out the same day, those are outpatient settings. Same day surgery. A lot of people go in the morning, have their surgery 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're home by noon. That is outpatient services. Observation. And this one's tricky, because I try to explain to my students, you can be outpatient, but under observation, laying in the same bed you're going to lay in if you were admitted to the hospital. But because the order says observation status, that means outpatient services. Okay? And so with understanding what type of services, outpatient services, you already know which classification system to use. Because again, for diagnoses, we use ICD-10-CM, and for procedures, CPT. And then there's HCPCS. I got to keep remembering to always identify HCPCS, HCPCS, for the supplies and medications. Outpatient services are usually less than 24 hours. But remember, observation, when you're laying in that bed, I always think of patients who come to the emergency room and they're not sick enough to be admitted to the hospital, but yet not well enough to really go home. And depending on the patient, our elderly patients in the emergency room, if they're a single elderly patient, our physicians tend, if they're a little nervous about sending them home by themselves, especially late at night, our physicians, our ER physicians, are known to admit them to observation status, which just means we're allowing them to be admitted to a room where somebody can keep an eye on them, but they're not actually on inpatient status. Observation is still outpatient services. Think of a woman who's threatening to miscarry. She's not admitted to the hospital, but she's not allowed to go home. They're just going to observe her for a little while to see if the contractions will slow down so that she can go home. Or are the contractions going to come full on, time for baby to come, and she needs to be admitted to deliver the baby. So again, outpatient services tend to last less than 24 hours. These patients, again, are not admitted to the hospital. And outpatient coding is relatively less complex than inpatient. Remember last week when I did inpatient medical coders, I talked about MSDRGs and classifying based on the third-party payer. Well, outpatient services are a little different. The coding rules for outpatient services apply, which means that one, we're supporting medical necessity for services provided. And remember, on an outpatient basis, if the signs and symptoms do not lead to a definitive diagnosis, then only the signs and symptoms are coded, outpatient. But on an inpatient basis, remember, if the signs or symptoms, and if the physician says he suspects or he questions or it's likely or it's possible or questionable, and he gives a diagnosis, we can code that on an inpatient basis, but we cannot code it on an outpatient basis. And on the outpatient basis, all you usually have anyway are signs and symptoms, because the amount of services does not really justify in-depth study to determine a definitive diagnosis. So a lot of us will go to the doctor with a sore throat or a headache or nasal congestion, and that's it. No further studies are really given. The key players for an outpatient setting are the physician and the facility. The physician's orders the services and can interpret the tests, but the facility actually performs any tests and supplies, such as the room, the nursing personnel, the drugs, and the supplies. And these are separate from the professional side of coding, which is the physician coding. And outpatient coders can work remotely from home. And I'm always asked, what is the salary? And you guys know Codemaster Coach's comment. I'm going to say it depends on who you work for and where you work. Again, inpatient coders tend to be paid at a higher rate due to the complexity of their job, but a good physician will pay their outpatient coder. A hospital, when they know they've got a good employee, they'll pay that outpatient coder to keep them. So again, it's determined based on who's doing the hiring. That's all I'm going to say about salaries. And just think of outpatient coding as those x-rays, those EKGs, the lab that's done in the hospital, but the patient's not in the hospital. The physician's office tends to send these patients over to the hospital to have these ancillary services performed. And the outpatient coder who works for the hospital codes these services for the hospital. All right, guys, again, that's outpatient medical coding. So we've covered them all. We've covered physician office coding. We've covered emergency room medical coder, inpatient medical coder, and now outpatient medical coder. So which of these types of medical coders captures your interest? Comment below, let me know. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, subscribe. Come on, we're doing this now. I'm staying busy every week. I'm uploading videos, and my goal is to be the go-to channel for new coders starting out, because I can remember when I first started coding, I knew I was interested in medical coding, but I didn't know a whole lot about it. So that's my goal on this channel, is to teach new coders coming in what medical coding is all about. Send me questions, I'll comment, I'll reply, I'll answer emails. My email is codemastercoach@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.